Alright guys, so we have some absolutely nightmarish updates coming out of North Gaza as well as Lebanon. So I want to go ahead and start off with this letter that was released by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, on, in their own words, the apocalyptic conditions that thousands of Palestinians in North Gaza are currently facing amidst an Israeli siege. So they start off here. They say the situation unfolding in North Gaza is apocalyptic. The area has been under siege for almost a month, denied basic aid and life-saving supplies, while bombardment and other attacks continue. Just in the past few days, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed. Most of them, as has been usual over the last year of this genocide, have been women and children, as well as thousands who have once again been forcibly displaced, keeping in mind that Israel has displaced essentially the entirety of the 2+ million population inside of Gaza, as well as destroying most of their infrastructure and most of their housing. They say hospitals have been almost entirely cut off from supplies and have come under attack, killing patients, destroying vital equipment, and disrupting life-saving services. They also say that healthcare workers and patients have been taken into custody. Let me say that again. Healthcare workers and patients have been taken into custody. So essentially you have the Israeli military not only attacking, raiding, bombing hospitals and destroying their supplies, and killing patients and killing healthcare workers, but also taking some of them to who knows where, right? I mean, we've covered extensively the reporting on some of the people who have been taken from Gaza being put into essentially torture camps inside of Israel. Now, they continue. They say dozens of schools serving as shelters have been bombed or forcibly evacuated. Tents sheltering displaced families have been shelled, and people have been burned alive. Now, I was out of town when this, specific story developed, so I didn't get to cover it on this channel, but some of the most horrifying images that I've seen in my entire life, when Israel bombed essentially a makeshift, healthcare tent center where people were trying to seek treatment. And after they bombed it, you could literally see people who were still hooked up to IVs as the flames were engulfing them and they were reaching out for help. I mean, the stuff that you could only imagine, would come out of some sort of historical textbook or some work of fiction. But to see it happening, and not only happening, but happening with the full support, endorsement, and with the weaponry from my country, I mean, it takes it to an entirely different level. The kinds of images that we are seeing out of Gaza, and out of Lebanon for that matter, over the last couple of months, should disturb anybody, right, who has any sort of sense of remaining morality. Now, they continue, they say, rescue teams have been deliberately attacked and thwarted in their attempts to pull people buried under the rubble inside of their homes. Again, the continuation of journalists and aid workers attacked by Israel. They say, we have received reports of civilians being targeted while trying to seek safety, and of men and boys being arrested and taken to unknown locations for detention. Again, I've shown you guys the numerous images that we have been getting of specifically Palestinian men or boys over the age of about 12 to 14 being rounded up, stripped down. In some cases, they have numbers on their arms. In some cases, they put numbers on their heads, and they take them off in the backs of trucks to who knows where, to be subjected to who knows what. They also say that livestock are dying, croplands have been destroyed, trees are burned to the ground, and agri-food systems have been decimated. The entire Palestinian population in North Gaza is at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence. The entire population of North Gaza is at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence. Does this look like a targeted hunt for Hamas to you guys? Or does this look like a perfect description of the definition of genocide? I know which one it is to me. They say humanitarian aid cannot keep up with the scale of the needs due to the access constraints. In other words, Israel is blocking access to humanitarian aid. They say basic life-saving goods are not available, humanitarians are not safe to do their work, and are blocked by Israeli forces and by insecurity from reaching people in need. And on top of all of this week, the Israeli parliament adopted legislation that would ban UNRWA and revoke its privileges and immunities. If implemented, such measures would be a catastrophe for the humanitarian response in Gaza, diametrically opposed to the United Nations Charter, with potential dire impacts on the human rights of millions of Palestinians who depend on UNRWA's assistance, and in violation of Israel's obligations under international law. They say, let us be clear, there is no alternative to UNRWA, and the blatant disregard for basic humanity and the laws of war must stop. So this is the latest testimony that we are getting out of North Gaza. It is as apocalyptic, as horrifying as you could possibly imagine. Somehow, even after covering this genocide for over a year straight at this point, I'm still astounded that the IDF finds ways to ramp up the violence, to somehow make it worse than it was the day before. But they continue to do that. And the situation in North Gaza, I don't think it's an exaggeration or hyperbolic at all to describe this as an exterminationist campaign. That is the only way to describe what Israel is doing to the people of North Gaza right now. Now, we continue here because we have further reporting. In this case, we have this ghoul, Antony Blinkin, Secretary of State under Biden, who has been fully complicit in this the entire way through. And he's spinning a different tale than the one we just read. He says, here from Dropsite News, yesterday, Secretaries Blinken and Lloyd Austin, in complete disconnect from the urgent reality on the ground, said that they were seeing progress in humanitarian aid entering Gaza. This, as Israel continues to actively starve over 400,000 Palestinians in the north for a second consecutive month, and a new IPC report warns of imminent famine for the entire Gaza Strip. So this is how they play this game, right? Utter denial, a delusional testimony here from Antony Blinken, pretending as if progress is being made. No, not only is progress not being made in terms of increasing the amount of humanitarian aid that gets to Gaza, but over the last couple of months, the amount of aid getting in has decreased. It has gotten worse. So to spin this somehow into a reality where steps are being made in the right direction, no, we're going in the completely wrong direction from where we should be. But this is how they get away with it. Just straight up, bald-faced lying about it. That's how they handle this. I mean, this is a testimony here as well on how many trucks are actually getting in to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. They say here, in an October 13th letter, Secretary Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin demanded Israel allow 350 trucks to Gaza per day within the next 30 days. Here, we have the senior UNRWA officer, Louise Waterridge, reporting that only 30 trucks have been entering Gaza per day. Again, guys, this is a decrease. I remember a time just a few months ago where getting like 70 to 100 to 150 to 200 trucks per day was considered a win, even though the experts are saying you need more like between 500 to 1,000 trucks per day just to meet the basic bare minimum requirements for survival for civilians in Gaza. And we're talking about 30 trucks per day getting in. Guys, this is to call it a fraction of what's needed is a drastic understatement. So you had Lloyd Austin and Antony Blinken writing a letter to Israel saying we need to see 350 trucks per day getting into Gaza. And we are now weeks and weeks and weeks away from that letter being sent to Israel, and we're still sitting at 30 trucks per day. I mean, that's not even 1/10 of what they demanded in their letter. And then here's the sticking point, which is that you can write a letter to Israel, you can ask them, you can beg and plead for them to allow more aid into Gaza, but if it doesn't come with strings attached, if it doesn't result in a change to U.S. policy or a cutting off of the weapons that we're sending to Israel to perpetrate this genocide, then it means nothing. They can ignore it all that they want because they know that you have no enforcement means to use against them, to force them to allow more aid into Gaza. Let's be clear about this. The entire strategy that Israel is using for the people of North Gaza right now is to starve them. That's the whole strategy that's being used. It's the general strategy that I covered on this channel a week back at this point. The whole strategy is requiring, not allowing humanitarian aid to the people of North Gaza. That's the strategy. So to pretend as if we are working in the right direction, no, we're not. We're heading in the wrong direction. Now, we also have some reports here in terms of some of the latest massacres that have taken place inside of Gaza. Here we have from Drop Site, more than 50 children, 50 kids, are among 84 Palestinians killed in just 2 Israeli airstrikes on residential buildings in northern Gaza. Gaza's government media office described the attacks as a brutal massacre. Now, we can go ahead and listen to a little bit of this and see some of this destruction in real time as reported by Al Jazeera.
At least 14 people were killed in al-Nusrat camp in central Gaza. An airstrike targeted a school where hundreds of forcibly displaced Palestinians were seeking shelter. Witnesses say the Israeli military is attacking residential buildings, then striking again after rescuers move in to help the injured.
We also have at the same time, this is an absolutely, tragic story that is kind of hard to wrap your mind around. But here we have an aid worker inside of Gaza who was helping to try to rescue people and to, recover bodies that had been obliterated during some of these Israeli strikes. And as he's helping to transport some of the bodies, he realizes that one of the bodies he's transporting is that of his own mother. I mean, genuinely impossible to wrap your mind around the kind of pain that some of these people are facing. They say here from Drop Site again, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 95 Palestinians across Gaza since dawn on Thursday, with 75 of those killed in northern Gaza alone. The continued killings come amidst a new Israeli ground offensive focused on Beit Lahia. Palestinians are being forcibly displaced from their homes, but even as they leave, they are being targeted. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this report here.
Gaza, Israeli airstrikes have left families shattered and communities in mourning. Paramedic Abdulaziz Al-Bordani is known for his dedication and commitment. But in the aftermath of an Israeli strike, his work takes a heartbreaking turn when he recognizes his mother among the casualties.
والله الماما استشهدت يا ريم يا طيانة يا ماما مروحة في الطريق ضربوا سيارة كانت ماشية في الطريق وانا شلتها وما بعرفهاش قال رجعت على العناية طلعت الماما.
Overwhelmed with the grief, he continues helping others, a testament to the resilience of first responders here in Gaza. On the 26th day of Israel's assault on northern Gaza, this is the state of Beit Lahia. A trail of destruction left by airstrikes across entire neighborhoods. To escape fallen bombs, families gather what they can carry and flee their homes looking for safer areas. But their journey is fraught with danger, and finding safety is becoming harder by the hour. Airstrikes are mainly carried out during the night and have killed dozens of people. Medical teams are still working to account for all those who have died. With a few beds and resources, hospitals in northern Gaza are struggling to cope with high numbers of injured civilians.
There is no way, again, to comprehend the kind of suffering, the kind of pain that these people are going through. We're talking about medics who have been killed by the dozens inside of Gaza, who still continue to put their lives on the line to go and pull bodies from the rubble to try to give people one last fighting chance to survive amidst this genocide. And you have somebody who has been putting themselves in that dangerous situation, and he's recovering bodies and comes across his own mother. I mean, again, something I cannot even fathom. But this is the kind of situation that Palestinians in Gaza are facing on a daily basis. This is what we have normalized. The continued attacks on civilians, the attacks on churches, mosques, schools, UN shelters, refugee camps, tent camps. I mean, this level of destruction, this level of death amongst a civilian population, the targeting of journalists, the targeting of aid workers, is completely unprecedented in modern history. This is not normal. This is not self-defense. This is not a targeted war against a terrorist organization. This is a fucking genocide. That's what this looks like. And this is happening again with the full and complete support of the United States government. Now we continue. To further emphasize the point I was just making, there's a new forensic architecture report revealing that Israel has systematically targeted civilian infrastructure in Gaza, damaging or destroying 71% of known shelters, 53% of utilities, 75% of schools, 80% of religious institutions, 91% of cultural heritage sites. They say it has also severely degraded agricultural and water resources, with approximately 70% of agricultural land destroyed, 47% of groundwater wells destroyed. I'm sure there were Hamas militants hiding in all of these groundwater wells, right? And 45% of greenhouses destroyed. They say these actions, according to forensic architecture, have permanently impacted the capacity for Gaza to sustain life. And that's the goal. That's the goal. So in that sense, they have succeeded. Now, at the same time, we have literally just a handful of members of Congress who are currently questioning the U.S. role, not just in supporting, arming, funding, giving diplomatic cover for this genocide, but now we have U.S. troops directly participating in helping Israel. And so you have a handful of Democrats, specifically Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Andre Carson, Ilhan Omar, and Summer Lee, who wrote a letter demanding a detailed account of U.S. involvement with Israeli forces, and they cited the War Powers Resolution of 1973, which established that only Congress, not the presidency, unilaterally, can authorize military action abroad, and assert that the Biden administration's involvement in the expanding regional conflict lacks proper authorization. Guys, we are talking about a letter that is demanding an explanation from the president as to why he is violating U.S. law in order to support Israel. And this letter was only signed by those 5 people: Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Summer Lee, Andre Carson. Those 5 people are the only ones out of the hundreds of members of Congress that we have in power right now. Nobody else has any questions about this? The potential violations of the War Powers Resolution, that Joe Biden is sending U.S. troops directly into harm's way inside of Israel as they continue to try to escalate towards a broader regional war. Nobody has any questions about this? That we may drag ourselves willingly into another endless, pointless, bloody, destructive, costly war in the Middle East? Nobody has any questions, except for these 5 here. I mean, just absolutely pathetic. Now, in terms of Lebanon, we have obviously the continued bloodshed and destruction using similar tactics to what we have seen inside of Gaza. But we have here from Ryan Grimm that the U.S. is now enforcing a siege on Lebanon, effectively. So, again, questions about the War Powers Resolution here. Now we're imposing a siege on Israel's behalf on a foreign country? Did this ever get approved by Congress? Did they ever ask you guys, the American people, about whether or not we supported going to war with Lebanon on Israel's behalf? Because make no mistake, a siege is effectively a declaration of war. So here's the latest here from the Cradle. Washington and the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon did not allow Iraqi Airways to land at Beirut Airport and establish an air bridge to provide aid for the displaced people in Lebanon. They say that Washington also threatened to sanction Middle East Airlines if it transported wounded patients from the Israeli pager attacks on the 16th and 17th of September. They say the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon also reportedly receives a list of all passenger names traveling through Beirut Airport from the International Air Transport Association. We also have some new reports here on double tap strikes that are happening on humanitarian workers inside of Lebanon. Let's go ahead and watch this video.
Just witnessed a double tap strike on medical workers in Lebanon. About an hour ago, we were sitting in the hotel and heard a massive strike. Came out to see what it was. It turned out to be a drone strike on an ambulance. About 20 minutes later, as we're trying to understand exactly what happened, another massive airstrike right there, right across the beach, 500 meters from the hotel, where at least a dozen media outlets are known to be stationed, targeting another ambulance, the ambulance that went to check out the original drone strike.
So that's what we call a double tap, right? You strike any given location, and then you wait, and then you allow the medical workers to go and try and rescue some of the people who have been struck, and then you target those ambulance workers as well. In this case, it looks like we had 2 different attacks on ambulances and healthcare workers. So like a double tap strike just on ambulance workers. And as she points out there, this is also in a place where, there are multiple press outlets trying to cover what's happening. And of course, this has been one of the deadliest places, one of the deadliest wars in modern history, if not the deadliest war in modern history for journalists. Now, we also have Israel ordering, essentially, as they've done in Gaza before, the evacuations of entire cities. In this case, we have Baalbek, where Israel essentially ordered this entire city to evacuate under the threat of violence. Guys, this is not normal in warfare. None of this is normal. None of this should be normalized. To just blanket order an entire population of any given city. I mean, think about the city that you live in, right? I grew up in Atlanta. I'm trying to think about a situation in which we were getting invaded by a foreign country and they ordered the entire population of Atlanta to evacuate, and what kind of logistics that would require. How many people would not be able to evacuate, right? What kind of destruction would ensue from the obliteration of an entire city like that? I mean, this is the kind of shit that we are allowing to continue to escalate. Entire cities. Now, I've shown you guys the videos before of whole neighborhoods being rigged with explosives, and then they do controlled demolitions of entire neighborhoods. Not where there's any active military threat and it's like a called-in airstrike precisely on some Hezbollah militant or whatever. No, we're talking about controlled demolitions of entire neighborhoods now. Same shit that they've done in Gaza. This is how you end up with so much destroyed civilian infrastructure. Again, that's not normal. That's not a natural part of war. They've been destroying it because from the beginning, inside of Gaza, the goal has been to make life impossible there. And now they are escalating some of the same strategies that we saw in Gaza, now in Lebanon as well. So there are your updates for today. Again, absolute nightmare fuel here. And it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight. I wish that there was. I've seen some reports about discussions towards potentially having conversations about moving towards a ceasefire, but both sides still remain to be intractable. So, impossible situation here. And the unfortunate reality, politically at least, as we are now days out from the November 5th election, 3 days away now, the unfortunate reality of American politics is that we do not have an anti-war party. We do not have an anti-genocide party. We do not have a pro-Palestine party. We do not have a party that is willing to be critical or confrontational with the apartheid state of Israel. We do not have that. It does not exist. And so we'll have to see what happens. There are degrees of awfulness that could potentially be on the horizon, but I'll keep covering it and, try to not let this story fall by the wayside amidst all of the political hand-wringing back and forth that's going to happen over the next couple of days.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying